I'm Keely Brassey. I'm the Director of Fundraising Operations at the Huntsman Mental Health Foundation. I play a major role in administration for our CRM and all of the other operations, bits and bobs in between.
Great, great. And could you just give a quick review of your key fundraising events that you run annually, and specifically how much they raise and what are the key revenue drivers for that? Is it tickets, fund a need, auction?
Yeah. So right now we do one major fundraising event annually. It's our annual Garden Party, which is basically our annual gala. We do that as a by invitation only event. And the major fundraising elements for that is predominantly sponsorships and also night of like paddle raise style giving. So that's where the bulk of our fundraising comes through from. We've only done that event 2 years now, or we'll do it for our third year this year. Last year we raised 2.2 million from the event.
Wow. And you just
Yeah.
started. Well done. Well done. There you
Thank
go.
you.
And of the 2.2 million you mentioned, paddle raise, ticket sponsors, could you give us like a percentage breakdown? It's our listeners really love to understand, where did you make most of that money? Like in what parts?
Ooh, I should have been more prepared for
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
question. No,
Just
you're okay.
ballpark.
Ballpark, the bulk of our fundraising at our last event was from our paddle raise. We had a really generous anonymous donation that we weren't expecting at all on the night of $1 million. So that just
Wow.
really put us above and beyond what we were expecting. For sponsorships, that would have been like the next largest amount, which probably would have been about, I'd say, 30 to 40% of the income of the revenue was from sponsorships.
Okay, that's great. And you said you did your second gala on Trellis, and then your first one you did not on Trellis.
That's right. So
Could you
our
tell me
first
about that?
one, yeah, our first gala was a little bit of a hodgepodge. We didn't have our own in-house CRM at that point. We used QGive, their event capabilities. And the biggest challenge was because we didn't have an in-house CRM, we didn't have anything that integrated. So I should just clarify, we're connected with the local university here, the University of Utah. And at that point, we were using their CRM, but because we didn't have administrative rights over it, we couldn't do any like product integrations, which made the work quite challenging.
Yeah.
And it resulted in having to do a lot of manual data management.
Okay.
Does that,
Yeah.
I feel like you asked more and I forgot what the rest of the question was.
No, all good. So I just trying to see you're using QGive, and then you didn't really have a CRM, and then and talk about the realization of we need to do it differently. Like, why did you want to do it differently? And then what were the key criteria you were looking for in a software?
Yeah, so the capabilities through QGive were relatively limited to like tickets and then night of giving, which was all very digital heavy. Our approach with our CEO, she's always looking for ways to do things a little bit differently. She doesn't want the fundraising event to feel like every other fundraising event that major philanthropists are attending and get fatigued from the same song and dance. So when we were using QGive, we were really limited to using a model where like you had to scan a QR code or go to a website to make a donation on the night. And we didn't want to continue doing that model because we felt like that was what everyone was doing. But also, we found that the demographic of the attendees at our gala just weren't responding very well to that type of giving. And we felt like we were leaving a lot of, as you say, a lot of money on the table at our events because people just didn't really feel comfortable giving in that method. So we knew we probably needed to shift to more of a traditional paddle raise approach, but still set it apart. And we liked how with Trellis, part of the motivation to moving was the paddle raise functionality where you can do that actual manual paddle raise, but then enter it in digitally as the evening is going and then have kind of those final figures and something that's documented digitally really quick and easy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So a big pain before was that you didn't have, it just didn't work. They didn't have the pedal raise functionality. So that way, and as you said, it's your biggest revenue driver of the entire thing. So that was really important. And then you said you also didn't have a CRM, and then you went out and got a CRM.
Yeah.
Did tell me about was that an influence in the decision at all as well?
Yeah, that was a pretty big influence for us on selecting Trellis. So we like I mentioned to you earlier, we brought Blackbaud Razor's Edge on in November of 2024. So we haven't had it for that long, and QGive does not integrate with Razor's Edge, and we also, like I said, there were shortcomings that didn't quite work for us. So we were looking for a different product that had more flexibility, more capability, more customization. And Trellis was recommended to us by our Blackbaud rep. And we ended up not doing too much comparison with different products because we were just so impressed by Trellis from the start.
Nice.
Yeah.
Checked off the important boxes and okay,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
And now that you've made the choice, what were the difference in results from Gala 1 to Gala 2?
So I would say one of the biggest differences were being able to have a much more customizable event page. We liked how you could have it behaved a lot more like a website with additional tabs. We really wanted to have our sponsorships marketed and available for purchase from the event webpage. And that wasn't a capability that we had before prior to using Trellis. It was really just put the information on the event page and hope that people contacted us to talk about a sponsorship. And we know that's always like a part of the conversation, anyways, is that there's going to need to be that personal relationship. But it just really assisted with the processing of the payment for sponsorships and just making it a lot more tangible and quick and easy for our sponsors to fulfill on. So that was a major plus for us and a big help. We really liked how with Trellis, we were able to implement our style and our branding with a lot more ease. We didn't feel like the branding for like, there wasn't branding for Trellis that was like super loud or trying to compete with our own look and feel. So we really liked that. And then from just like an administrative perspective, a lot of this kind of came down to a lot of the pros came from us having our own in-house CRM. But because of the integration and being able to have our own in-house CRM, the data management was just 5 million times better than what we had experienced the year prior. Because the year prior, we were dealing so manually with even just our guest list, and having that in a one-stop shop in Trellis was pretty simple reporting and easy to download reports and looking up of guests. That was a huge shortcut for us on time.
Amazing. And if you could, for me, try and quantify it at all, like the time savings or the more money raised, like with any sort of numbers, was it hours to weeks? Was it what was the I love the 5 million times for sure, but
Yeah, something more realistic. So I read your questions beforehand and I was like, ooh, how do I quantify that question?
yeah.
I would say when we did our gala prior to using Trellis, it was like the data management was 100% my focus for a good solid 2 working weeks of just like trying to get a grip on the guest list and the RSVPs and who had booked stuff, who hadn't, and having the integration of Trellis with Razor's Edge where we could directly compare like who have we invited and who's booked a ticket, that like took probably like 2 full-time working week hours down to looking at it once a day for maybe 10 minutes. So yeah, it was a huge time saver.
And what does that once a day for 10 minutes look like now versus what it was before? What does that 10 minutes consist of?
Really just running a report from Trellis and then compare. But we can also look at the reporting within Blackbot itself, within Razor's Edge. So because the data feeds through, we can run like a query within the database, or even just within the like event capabilities where we can look at who have we invited and then who's booked the ticket. So it's really just like checking on it versus having to manually do the data review. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's more of a just like a peace of mind check, make sure it all looks good, and catch I think Patty to Patricia maybe didn't go exactly, and you get
That
that.
is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, yeah, welcome to the reconciliation part of a CRM for sure. We're trying to figure that one out, but
Yes.
yes. Yeah. No, that's really helpful to contextualize it. So now that you're only spending 10 minutes instead of the 2 weeks, what are you doing with that extra time? I'm curious. Are you finding that you're finding more insights in the data? You're just maybe going home earlier, whatever that is. But have you thought about the growth opportunity or things that you could do now because everything is a lot more streamlined?
I think really what it did for me personally, it probably had the biggest impact on my role since I'm the director of operations and my role is so administrative heavy, particularly with our data. It just meant that I'm sure every nonprofit feels this way. When you have a major event coming up, it's just all hands on deck. And it meant that like my time could be used focusing on other high priority items and not just focusing solely on like the guest list and the RSVPs and trying to wrangle that and spending like every single day in the 2 weeks leading up to the event doing that. So it meant that I was able to be like a larger contributor to the workload for our gala.
Nice.
Mm,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And you talked about the fund and need a little bit. I know people would find it valuable if you don't mind sharing some of the tactics and tricks and tips you had or strategies around that. $1 million donation really helps, unexpected, helps crank it up. That's not going to happen every year, I don't think, for you, but maybe would love to understand, your understanding of maybe why that happened and also what other things you did to make sure that you had a large fund and need. Because what I'm seeing in fund and need is like the gross revenue of a fund and need and the net revenue of fund and need is the same, right?
Mm,
So whereas the gross of ticket sales and the net of ticket sales is sometimes very different.
true.
And the effort of a silent auction versus the effort of a fund to need, you have to get all the items for a silent auction. You got to make sure you disseminate them. For a fund to need, you don't, right? There is still lots of work in a fund to need though. And that's why I would love to hear how you do your fund to need and the strategy you did and how you were so successful.
Yeah, so we do have a pretty incredible advantage so we're the Huntsman Mental Health Foundation and we were started by the Huntsman family who are major philanthropists in the state of Utah. Because of that relationship, we have been able to like unlock the doors to a lot of other people interested in philanthropy in Utah who have relationships with that family. So that's been a major like pro for us in general. And it helps us to invite and get the right people to our events. Our strategy for our paddle raise moment was we spent a lot of time focusing on planted gifts. So we put a lot of energy working with donors who were interested in giving prior to our event and asking if they would attend and be a planted gift, which inspired others to give. So that was a big focus for us. And that helped bring in a lot of those smaller donations as well, having that inspiration of larger gifts. Another like major focus of our gala, which I think I mentioned earlier, our CEO is always looking for ways to like set us apart and make our events feel different than your typical kind of like attending a ballroom for a sit down meal and listening to a program and then a giving moment. We really tried to turn we really tried to produce something that was unique. And so the way that we did that was our gala was hosted actually at our CEO's personal home, which was really special and intimate. And it was more of a walkthrough style where we were calling them mission stops. And so at each mission stop, attendees had an opportunity to learn about the work happening at the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and get like that moment of inspiration to give. So that was actually the bulk of our evening, was going through those mission stops, having a really good opportunity to learn about the work. And then along the way, we had really yummy food at different like food stations. So it wasn't a sit down meal, and allowed for people to do a lot more mingling and moving and learning at their own pace. And then we tried to keep our actual like scheduled program moment really short and more of the conclusion to the evening. And that's when we had the giving moment. So we just didn't want people to be fatigued sitting at a table for a couple of hours and then asking them to give a donation. So that was really like the major. I know that doesn't directly tie to the software, but
Oh no, it's
that's
okay.
how we were like trying to prime our attendees and inspire them to give, was by trying to immerse them in an experience a lot more, and then have those planted paddle raise gifts, fund a need gifts.
Wow. I'm really glad that you gave that information because I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in it because there's two things that we've seen that really work for paddle raise. One is planted gifts. We call them
Hmm.
pre-seeded gifts.
Yeah.
And then the second is you have to tell a good story.
Yeah.
But I've never heard someone say, but yeah, if you tell the story for too long and they're exhausted and then they have to give, then you instead of move them through an experience. And then I'm assuming at the end of that, the mission stops, then everyone gets sent together and that's when you did the ask.
That's right. We did end in more of a, I suppose you could say, traditional setting where there
Yeah.
were tables with assignments and found
Hmm.
your table. That's when we had our short kind of 15-20 minute program. And then
Hmm.
we had the ask. And one of the things that we had, which was like a major pro for us, is we were able to engage a lot of the researchers and clinical workers who work at the hospital and do all of the incredible work. Like, they were presenting on it at the mission stops.
Nice.
And then we had the president of the university we're affiliated with. He was a big part of the program as well. Oh, and one thing that was fun too is
Yeah.
we told the audience that if we hit $1 million for the paddle raise, that he would jump into the swimming pool. And so that happened very quickly. And then he jumped into the pool, and it was just a fun little moment. The only con with that, though, was we got to that goal faster than we thought. And then the audience was like demanding he jump in the pool. And we hadn't gotten to our lower tiers of what we were wanting to ask for gift levels. So that did derail us a little bit. I think maybe we would think about doing that slightly differently in future, but it just kept everyone really happy and like really motivated people to give at
Hmm.
that higher level.
Yeah, and that's a great problem at that point, right?
Yeah.
And what's the planted gift amount? Like, so you raised sounds like between 1.5 million in the paddle raise because of that big gift. Well, how much did you have that was planted? Would you
We,
say?
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think we had probably around 150,000.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And then your goal was probably was like 500,000 ish was your hope.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We wanted to raise 600,000 on the night, and then we were really surprised by that big gift.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
incredible.
Yeah.
Also, a different, thanks for unpacking how you did your gala. Like, I know it doesn't have to do the software, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be really valuable for people that watch this. Now, and you did quantify the change, which is fantastic. The only other thing is there, I guess, before I go on to the last question, which is when if another hospital, another healthcare foundation of any sort asked about Trellis, what would you tell them? Is there any other results or any other things that you haven't got to say yet or that stand out for you?
I think the only other thing really has been your guys' customer support is really valuable. I've really appreciated how through the onboarding process, our account rep was really responsive, very hands-on, always willing to like walk through the different capabilities of Trellis and look for solutions with us. And then I've been really impressed with, I know you guys can't do anything and everything that we want at the drop of a hat, but I've been really impressed with the responsiveness of asking for feedback and then really taking it on and looking at areas where you can improve and implement things that we're talking about. Like, I felt pretty impressed that the feedback I've given you guys will actually spend some time looking at and seeing if there's a solution for it.
Great. And I know that we don't offer in-person support or emergency support. Was that worrying for you at all when you made the purchasing decision? And how do you feel about that? How did you feel about that on the night of? Because you raised a significant amount of money.
I will admit that was a little nerve-wracking, just
Mhm.
thinking like on the night, first time users of the product, just feeling like you didn't have that safety net if something did go wrong. Luckily, we didn't end up having any technical issues, so it wasn't a problem, but it probably did give us a little bit of worry. Yeah.
But now that you're on the other side of it, what would you tell someone that maybe has that same worry?
You guys did a really good job in the lead up to the event, having different like touch bases to try to alleviate any concerns and talk through any last minute questions and really just make sure we felt confident using the product. So I think that was really good. Mm. Really, I didn't personally feel a lot of concern in the lead up, knowing that we wouldn't have emergency support. I think it's more of alleviating those concerns within my team to make sure that they're satisfied with not having that. Sorry, that's not very eloquent.
No, that's okay. Do you mind me asking what you had to do to, like, what you said or did to make sure they felt okay, your team specifically?
I think it was probably just came down to understanding what their points of concern were or their points
Mhm.
of worry and like really drilling in and addressing those items with our account rep in the lead up to the
Mhm.
event and making sure we understood like all of the ways to do something, what the potential outcomes would be, and any I don't wanna say troubleshooting, but maybe that's the right word,
Yeah,
just like what we could expect. Yeah, so just trying to get as much information as we can in the lead up.
great.
Yeah.
And then the last question, if another foundation similar to yours asked you why you chose Trellis, what would you tell them?
I would say the major elements came down to it's a product that integrates really well with our CRM. That was a huge plus for us and a major driving factor. We were really impressed by the customization capabilities of Trellis and really just like the breadth of functionality that it has. We didn't use everything available through Trellis, but we felt really confident in the early stages choosing it because we didn't know everything that we would need at our gala, but we were like, we know Trellis does a huge amount of functionalities, so we'll be pretty covered on all fronts if for flexibility purposes.